April 19, 1943. Warsaw, German-occupied Poland. Dawn crept through the cracks of a shattered city. The air tasted of smoke. The silence unnatural. Inside a cramped apartment, a woman knelt beside a wooden crate. Her hands shook not from fear, but urgency. Her name was Irena Sendler. She lifted the lid. Inside, a baby, no more than 8 months old, wrapped in a gray blanket, eyes wide with confusion. A distant gunshot echoed through the streets. Irena whispered, "Quiet, little one. Your life depends on it." Outside, SS trucks rumbled toward the Warsaw Ghetto. Flames rose in the distance. She pressed the child to her chest and stepped into the open, the machinery of death titans. In 1942, the world was drowning in darkness. Hitler's final solution had entered its deadliest phase. Across occupied Europe, the deportations accelerated. Hundreds of thousands were marked for annihilation. But nowhere was the machinery of death more concentrated than in Poland. Over 3 million Polish Jews lived here before the war. By 1942, over half were gone. Warsaw, the largest Jewish community in Europe, had become a sealed cage. The Warsaw Ghetto, disease, starvation, deportation trains every dawn. And yet, inside this inferno, resistance took a different form. A small group of teachers, priests, doctors, diplomats, and ordinary citizens, most without weapons, without rank, began crafting one of the most extensive rescue operations in human history. Its name, Żegota, the Council for Aid to Jews. Created December 4, 1942. Its mission, save lives one by one, no matter the cost. The punishment for helping a Jew, death, for you and your family. And still, they acted. A network of ghosts. The heroes of Żegota did not wear uniforms. They moved in silence, through sewers, abandoned warehouses, ruined convents, and bombed-out streets. At the center was Irena Sendler, head of the children's department. Her task, smuggle Jewish children out of the ghetto, hidden in ambulances, toolboxes, sacks of potatoes, even coffins. Each rescue required forged documents, bribed guards, and nerves of iron. But she was not alone. There was Jan Dobrakzinski, arranging new identities. Zofia Kosaksuka, writer-turned-conspirator, crafting networks of safe houses. The Ladislaw Bartaszewski, coordinating couriers across the countryside. Sister Matilda Getter, opening convent doors despite the risk of execution. And dozens more, most never recorded, never rewarded, never acknowledged. The Germans intensified their patrols. The SS set traps for couriers. Neighbors informed on one another. A single whisper could collapse an entire network. Inside Żegota, another fear grew. If the ghetto fell, thousands of children would be lost forever. Every day the moral weight deepened. But this was a race against a clock no one could see. The burning of Warsaw and the impossible mission. April 1943. The Warsaw Ghetto Uprising erupts, the longest Jewish revolt of the war. German artillery pounds the district. Black smoke covers the capital. Amid the chaos, Żegota launches its most dangerous operations. Every sound was a threat. Every corner an ambush. Every step a question of life and death. Irena Sendler moves through a side gate as flames paint the sky orange. Gunfire ricochets off brick walls. A mother hands her a child wrapped in a ragged coat. "Take her," the mother pleads. "She must live, even if I do not." Irena nods, unable to promise anything. Elsewhere, couriers steal into burning apartments, pulling children from hiding places. Doctors sedate infants to keep them silent. Priests open underground tunnels leading into church crypts. Polish families hide children beneath floorboards as German boots thunder overhead. Short, punchy, chaotic. A knock, a shout, a chase through alleys, a false name, a train whistle, a forged passport still wet with ink. A life saved by seconds. But the Germans close in. October 1943. Irena Sendler is captured. Thrown into Pojak prison, tortured for information, Bones broken. She says nothing. Sentenced to death. But Żegota strikes back, bribing a guard, forging her execution papers, smuggling her out as a corpse. She emerges from the shadows and continues the work. By 1944, as Warsaw descends into ruins during the uprising, Żegota moves its rescued children deeper into hiding. Farms, orphanages, monasteries, family homes from Krakow to Lublin. Despite the chaos, the mission continues. By war's end, over 10,000 souls have been saved. When the world saw the lists, when the guns finally fell silent in 1945, Europe awoke to a landscape of ruins. Cities burned, families shattered, whole communities erased. In a small room in Warsaw, beneath a loose floorboard, 2 glass jars were found. Inside, names, children's true identities, their Jewish birth names, matched with the false ones Żegota had given them. Thousands of names, each one a victory, a defiance, a life pulled back from the edge of extinction. Many families reunited, many more never did. For decades, the world barely knew their story. Poland was behind the Iron Curtain. Paperwork vanished. Witnesses died. The heroes faded into obscurity. It was not medals they sought, but silence to protect those they saved. Only much later did their names re-emerge. Irena Sendler, who saved 2,500 children. The Ladislaw Bartoszewski, later Foreign Minister of Poland. Zofia Kosik, whose writings rallied the underground. Jan Dobrakzinski, who placed children in safe homes. Sister Matilda Getter, protector of the smallest and most fragile. And thousands more, never recorded, never known. History often remembers the battles, the generals, the empires that rise and fall. But true heroism often lives in the quiet acts, the hidden hands reaching into darkness to lift another into the light. Their story is not one of war, but of the refusal to surrender humanity, even when humanity seemed impossible. They did not save the world, but to more than 10,000 people, they were the world. Every resistance has its soldiers. Żegota's soldiers did not carry rifles, but paper, documents, passports, baptismal records, transit permits, each one a shield against death. In 1943 alone, Żegota produced nearly 50,000 forged identity papers. But paper could not walk by itself. Young women in wool coats, scarves, and worn leather boots. Among them, Janina Bauman, delivering rations through the city's ruins. Halina Wolinska, who carried documents under the lining of her dress. Wanda Krahelska-Filipovich, a middle-aged aristocrat with an iron will. They were ghosts, passing unnoticed through checkpoints, carrying life concealed within envelopes, shoe soles, and hollowed-out book covers. German patrols were relentless. A single mistake could unravel the entire network. Every mission was a rehearsal for death. A dim Warsaw street. A courier approaches a checkpoint. A German guard barks a command. She pauses, smiles politely, hands over her papers. Sweat gathers under her collar. A stamp. A nod. She walks away, heartbeat thundering. Inside her coat pocket, the baptism certificate of a 6-year-old girl hiding in an attic 2 blocks away. One stamp had just saved her life. To save a child, you must first erase them. Their name, their origins, their past. Żegota worked with a network of orphanages and convents across Poland, each one a sanctuary carved out of danger. Sister Matilda Getter, head of the Franciscan Sisters of the Family of Mary, accepted over 750 Jewish children, hiding them under new Christian identities. A cold winter night, 2 nuns lift a wooden hatch revealing a dimly lit cellar. A frightened boy sits in the shadows. Sister Matilda kneels beside him. "My child, you are safe now." She presses a small wooden crucifix into his hand, not to convert him, but to protect him during inspections. Elsewhere, in an orphanage in Turkowis, Dr. Adina Bladyswager, secretly Jewish herself, administers medicine to malnourished children. Above ground, Irena Sendler, still limping from torture injuries, helps evacuate children from a ruined tenement. Mortar blasts shake the street. She shields 3 children with her own body as debris rains down. History remembers armies, but on this battlefield, the most courageous warriors were unarmed. By October, the uprising collapses. The city is evacuated and razed. Żegota splits into fragments. Couriers fleeing with children across fields, forests, and rivers. Some escape, some vanish, some are never seen again. But the mission does not end. Even in the ruins of Warsaw, even as the city becomes a graveyard of bricks and memories, Żegota rescues its last children, carrying infants through the snow as German troops retreat in early 1945. The war ended, but the silence remained. Children grew into adults, carrying secrets even they could not fully understand. Some learned their true names decades later. Others never did. Today, more than 10,000 descendants walk the world because of the nameless, the quiet, the invisible heroes who refused to bow to darkness. Names written by candlelight, preserved beneath floorboards for half a century. In the darkest years of human history, they proved one truth, that even a single act of courage can illuminate the world. 1945, when the world returned to the ruins. When the Red Army marched into Warsaw in January 1945, they did not find a city. They found ashes. Entire districts had ceased to exist. Churches were hollow shells. Schools flattened. Bridges collapsed into the frozen Vistula. Amid the rubble, Żegota's surviving members wandered back into the ruins, searching for the children they had scattered across the country. Irena Sendler limps through an abandoned street, breathing the icy air. She stops at the spot where the Warsaw Ghetto wall once stood, now nothing more than shattered bricks. She whispers, "How many did we save? And how many are lost?" Couriers reunite at a safe house in Zalibors, a building barely still standing. Names are read aloud. Some are marked, found. Many others, unknown. The war was over, but the mission of Żegota had only entered a new chapter. With peace restored, families begin searching for the lost children. At orphanages, in convent halls, in hospital basements, officials read out lists of rescued names. Parents arrive with trembling hands, photographs creased by time. Scenes of heavy emotion. A mother collapses when she recognizes her daughter's eyes. A boy hesitates, unable to remember his family's faces. A reunion that happens, and one that tragically does not. For some children, their past came rushing back. For others, it remained forever out of reach. The hidden identity jars, unearthed from beneath floorboards, are opened. Volunteers carefully unfold the fragile papers. Names, birthplaces, parents, addresses that no longer exist. Through these lists, hundreds of real names are restored. But there is another painful truth. Many rescued children are now orphans. Their families perished in Treblinka, Majdanek, Auschwitz. Żegota members step forward again, arranging care homes, adoption placements, and education. The saving of a life does not end at rescue, continues through every day that follows. An adult survivor interviewed decades later. He looks into the camera. "I do not remember her name," he says softly, "but I remember her hands, carrying me through the fire." For nearly half a century after the war, the world heard little of Żegota. Poland fell under Soviet control. Resistance stories were censored. Documents disappeared. Witnesses died in silence. Many heroes lived their lives quietly. Irena Sendler became a social worker. The Ladisław Bartoszewski wrote history books. Zofia Kossak returned to her writing. Priests and nuns served in their parishes until old age. None sought attention. None claimed glory. But the children remembered. By the 1970s and 1980s, survivors, now adults, began searching for the people who had saved them. A movement grew. Testimonies surfaced. Old lists were rediscovered. Politicians, historians, and filmmakers took notice. In 1965, Yad Vashem awarded the title Righteous Among the Nations to several Żegota members, the first steps in restoring their place in history. Irena Sendler, in her 90s, sits in a simple armchair. Her hands rest on her lap. "I only did what any human should do," she says quietly. I could have done more. So much more. Heroism rarely announces itself. In this case, it hid in plain sight for decades, waiting for the world to finally listen. A classroom in New York, where a rescued child now teaches history. A family in Tel Aviv lighting candles for the nun who saved their grandfather. A memorial in Warsaw, engraved with names once buried under rubble. They were teachers, and doctors, and priests, mothers, students, couriers, strangers. They fought not for flags, not for nations, but for the simple truth that every life has worth. A slow pan over the 2 glass jars now preserved in a museum. Names written in fading ink. Lives once almost extinguished. They did not ask to be remembered, but remembering them is how we honor the light they kept alive. When the world was at its darkest. Time does not erase courage. It reveals it. In the decades after the war, camera crews and historians begin interviewing survivors, now grown with children and grandchildren of their own. A quiet studio. Soft light on an elderly woman's face. I was 3 years old when they carried me out in a toolbox. I remember a woman singing to me so I wouldn't cry. Only much later did I learn her name. A man in his 80s, hands folded on a table. My parents died in Treblinka, but Żegota gave me a second family. They gave me a life and a future I never should have had. Another survivor sits before the camera, a faded photograph in hand. When I was a child, I thought priests and nuns were all the same. I didn't know they were saving us, while risking their own lives. Each testimony is a thread, woven into the tapestry of a story the world almost lost. What history almost forgot. Żegota is unique in occupied Europe. It was the only government-funded organization created exclusively to save Jews. These were not soldiers. They did not fight with guns. Their battlefield was paper, and their enemy was time. What makes this story extraordinary is not the scale, though 10,000 lives is immense. It is the fact that nearly all participants remain anonymous. They saved lives quietly, then went back to ordinary existence. Archival images appear. A convent courtyard. A burned street in Warsaw. The handwriting from the identity jars. Their voices echo over the image. They violated every Nazi law, not to rebel, but simply to remain human. Those saved by Żegota became parents. Their children grew up listening to stories whispered at kitchen tables. Stories of escape, loss, and impossible hope. A granddaughter places flowers at a memorial wall in Warsaw. A grandson stands in a museum, reading his ancestors' name from the jar lists. A family gathers around a table in Israel, passing down a story once hidden out of fear. If Żegota hadn't intervened, I wouldn't exist. My children wouldn't exist. Our entire family line would have. 10,000 saved lives became tens of thousands of descendants. Their existence is the living proof of resistance. Not in battlefields, but in compassion. The world finally says their names. Honorees frail in wheelchairs, led by family, receive medals decades after their acts. Justice does not always arrive on time, but remembrance can still heal. Irena Sendler receiving honors in her later years. The Ladislaw Bartoszewski addressing the Polish parliament. Sisters of convents receiving awards on behalf of those who have passed. A reporter asks Irena, "Do you feel like a hero?" She smiles faintly. "No. The real heroes are the mothers who handed me their children, not knowing if they would ever see them again." Silence. What compels a person to risk everything for a stranger? What seeds courage? In a time designed to cultivate fear. A ruined ghetto street. A convent door closing. A courier tying her boots by candlelight. The heroes of Żegota lived with one truth. If we do nothing, they will die. They acted without reward. They hid their deeds for decades. And many died without the world ever speaking their names. In a world designed to extinguish hope, they kept a spark alive. 10,000 sparks. 10,000 lives. 10,000 futures the darkness could not swallow. Cut to the identity jars preserved behind glass. Names, dates, handwriting, the fragile evidence of defiance. Courage is not loud. Often it whispers. It hides in basements, in attics, in convent halls. It walks through checkpoints with trembling hands. It risks everything for someone who cannot repay the debt. They were not warriors, but they proved that the bravest battle is simply choosing to save another life.